Well, good afternoon. We got a couple more people still joining our webcast today. Thank you for those, especially that joined us for federal laws yesterday. Today, a deep dive into the recently concluded Utah legislative session. We won't take the whole hour today, maybe a half hour, and we're going to show you some of the modifications that affect our Utah associations. So thank you once again for being here. Just a reminder, you can go to our website, previous session recordings, and find previous webcasts on training. Here's our upcoming schedule. In about 3 weeks from today, we will do Financials 101, Governing Documents 101 in May, Documentation, how to cover yourself, CYA, in June, Reserve Studies in July, Proactive Communication in August. September will be Insurance 101, and October 25th, RFPs and Contract Business Partners. So exciting. Once again, if you haven't had the opportunity to vote for our first management company, FCS Community Management, nominated once again for Best of Salt Lake in the property management category. Snap that QR code really quick. Go place your vote. It just takes a second. They do it via phone number. So once you voted once per phone number, that's your vote. We're looking to win that again for a second year for FCS. And Founders Day is a week from today. Stop by any of our offices in Draper, Ogden, Provo, Cedar City, or St. George for a treat and to say hello, celebrating 24 years of HOA management. And on Saturday, April 15th, so in 10 days from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Mountain Time, learn how to be a more effective board member by attending the Board Leadership Certificate course. It's not too late to register. Snap that QR code. It'll take you to the registration link. Like we mentioned yesterday, if you have not registered yet, you can still attend. We're going to teach you some great content, but the printed materials will be shipped to you afterwards, or they're shipped to us and then you come pick them up. We cover the full cost, which is $49 per student. And we'll cover that cost for you. Our firm belief is the more education you have as a board member, the easier our jobs are as management. And proud to announce our education scholarship for college, $2,500. The theme is building community. And there's QR code that takes you to that information. The deadline is July the 19th. Some other QR codes and information, ways to find just plethora of information on HOA management and being a board member. Just a reminder that all of our offices and our live customer service will be closed in 2 days. If you're watching this live on Friday, April the 7th, as we celebrate Good Friday and take that as a company holiday. It's a good spring break between President's Day and Memorial Day. And so all of our staff, even extended customer service, will be closed on Friday. However, we have regular extended customer service till 9 p.m. tomorrow night, and on Saturday from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. But and then if there's emergencies, always we have our 24/7 call service to take care of you. All right, once again, I'm Michael Johnson. I'm the CEO of the HOA Living Companies, which includes FCS Community Management and Community Association Management A+, and various others. But I assume most of you are with those companies, since this is a Utah specific broadcast today. And I currently do serve, I'm the past chair of, not the immediate past chair, but past chair and a current member of our Legislative Action Committee here in Utah. If you are interested in serving on the Legislative Action Committee for homeowner association industry issues, please let us know. We've had some we have plenty of managers that want to be on that committee, plenty of attorneys, we have insurance people, reserve people. The seats that are hardest but are the most important are those who are HOA board members. We have 3 seats open for HOA board members to fill. And so if you are interested in any way in serving on the Legislative Action Committee, we meet once a month, generally on the 4th Wednesday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. That's variable. There's a lot more work during the 7 weeks of the legislative session, of course, but we want your input as HOA board members. And yes, a lot of us still serve on boards and have served on boards, but we're kind of looking at it on the management side of things now. We need your perspective. So if you're interested, please, and a homeowner board member, not a manager, but a homeowner board member, and want to be on Legislative Action Committee, get that information to me somehow, and we will send that up the line. We would love to have you. All right, let's talk about our recently completed legislative session and what the folks up at the Capitol did. Now, remember our hierarchy of authority, right? We showed yesterday the pyramid, which goes from most authoritative at the top. On our Utah example, using the arch, we like to send it the other way, where at the bottom, things at the bottom, the bigger lines have more precedence over the things going up the arch. So you can have your community rules regulations up there in the very light blue, but they have to be consistent with your bylaws, which has to be consistent with your articles, which has to be consistent with your CC&Rs, which and Utah CC&Rs and the recorded plat are equally distributed. And then case law, state case law, local ordinances, state case law, federal case law, and federal laws are at the very top. And that's what we talked about yesterday. And you can watch that on our website or through YouTube and see the federal laws we talked about yesterday. Today, we're going to talk about state laws. So remember, if we make a change in state laws, since it has a higher authority, foundational authority than your community specific documents, these new laws are going to rule the day. The first one we want to talk about is Senate Bill 191, entitled Condominium and Community Association Amendments. And I just want to pop up here. Here's the QR code that will take you to last year's legislative update from 2022. A lot of what happened this year was tinkering with the things that got passed a year ago. So that's why we've thrown this up here. So watch last year, and then it'll give you a little idea of some of the minor corrections that were made this year. 191 passed. Senator Harper is our good friend up at the Capitol. This is the bill that the Legislative Action Committee worked on about 8 months ago, talked to Senator Harper, and he ran the bill for us. So this is the industry-supported and sponsored bill. Still, even though we worked on it 8 months ago, it was the very last day of the legislature before it finally passed. And the governor actually just signed it on the last possible day to sign bills last week. Might have been 2 weeks ago, but not very long ago, at the very end. So what is 191? And Senator Harper ran our industry bill last year, so he was the right one to run some of these tinkering with that bill, plus some new things. Board of Director qualifications, low water use during drought conditions, the Department of Commerce registration, rental unit administrative fees, which I'm very excited to share with you, and limits actions against a board or community association. So these are some of the things in SB 191. Now, it was important, and you probably saw on the news in January, right when the legislative session was getting up. And KSL had a story, Channel 2 had a story, I think Channel 13 had a story, where there is a member of a board who down in Lehigh in a community that is a registered sex offender. And he got properly elected to the board. There's no laws that prevent a sex offender from running for a board. And more importantly, there was no laws that prevent a sex offender who typically the law says cannot go into a park or into those kind of areas at all, a public park. Well, homeowner association parks and common areas weren't wrapped up into that. And so these are some correction as a result of that very visible news story that came out in January and the problems this community has been having in Lehigh. So this management committee, now this is in 8, this is in the condominium statute, but it's also that we're reading from, but it's also in the Community Association Act as well. So this is all community association types in both of our 2 major Utah acts. What it says is number 4, let's look at there. Without limiting the qualifications, an association may, through the governing documents or the management committee's internal procedures. Remember, a board in Condo Act is called a management committee. So management committee, board, same thing. So the board internal procedures, so it can be in the governing documents, a resolution, CC&Rs, bylaws, or just in a board decision. They can disqualify an individual from serving as a member of the management committee / board because the individual, 1, has been convicted of a felony, or 2, is a sex offender. And that kind of common sense language that we're reading there just wasn't in the act before. And so now it is in the acts, both acts, and a board can just draft a resolution or an internal procedure that states that a sex offender or a convicted felon can't serve on a board. It doesn't, so remember, going back, it does not, the law doesn't make it so a convicted felon or a sex offender automatically can't be on a board. An association has to make that decision independently. We like laws like that. We want local control. We want the HOAs to make the best decision for them, not the guys and gals up at the Capitol. So there were some modifications to what rules can and can't do. This is tagging on to some of our drought and water restriction laws from a year ago, which is really funny because I'm still looking out my window at tremendous amounts of snow that fell in the last couple of days. And mercifully, I see some sunshine. So I hope that the snow's done for the season, and I hope that we still are smart and conserve water, and this water can last for a long time. But a rule may not, okay, this is from last year, prohibit or restrict the conversion of a grass park strip to water efficient landscaping. Okay, that's where it was left last year, but this has been added. Or prohibit low water use on lawns during drought conditions. Some associations, bad actors, no one on this webcast, of course, but for some reason, associations were fining homeowners who lowered the water and therefore had a yellow lawn or let it go a little bit dormant. They were fining them for having a not appealing looking lawn. And it, best common sense would be not to do that. But now we have it, since some associations didn't use that common sense, now it is the law. And it does not matter if the association's new or old. Well, and also the last part there is they wanted associations to adopt water-wise, water-efficient landscaping rules last year. And once again, it's saying there in C that if you were in existence before March 5th of this year, you've got until June 30th to get some water-efficient landscaping rules out there. This would be the Community Association Act, not the Condominium Act. There's some question, the attorneys have a tough time sometimes on whether the act applies to older or newer. And this 7A expressly says that the whole chapter, which is the act, the total act, applies to an association that registers or renews or updates the association registration under this section. So basically, they're trying to say, look, the act applies to everybody whenever you annually renew. So this is something that you, that are client board members, have asked us to work on for several years. And I've been working on it for several years, kind of my pet project, where we have significant rentals in a lot of the communities. And it's very difficult to administer to all those tenants. The homeowner association or condominium association has a responsibility to the member of the association. The member is the ownership entity, not to a tenant. And why, if there's 100 units and 80 of them are owner occupied and 20 of them are not, you know, we're paid a management fee for 100 contacts, not 120 contacts. And so, and the same thing for the board. The law is the homeowner, the landlord is responsible for communicating association issues back to their tenants. It just doesn't happen. We all know it doesn't happen. And so there needed to be a mechanism, which this idea came from you guys, to be able to charge like some more money to the rental units so that you can do the extra work of now you're contacting two parties to communicate most information. So the idea came up from other states of a annual rental permit. I'm a landlord, I have a condominium, and I rent it out. Now the association can choose to charge an annual rental permit to me, the landlord. Now I can pass that on, of course, to my tenants if my lease allows me to do that. But this is to help defray, as you can see there, that line 3, the association's additional administrative expenses directly related to a lot that is a rental lot as detailed in the accounting provided to the lot owner. So this is, of course, from the Community Association Act portion, not the Condominium Act, because in the Condominium Act, it's called a unit, not a lot. But there's a couple of things here. One, we got this passed because there's a need for additional housing. And every time an association restricts rentals in their community to 10% or 0%, then it hurts the rental market. So the stakeholders, realtors, etc., wanted to say, okay, we'll allow this rental permit, which would generally be against, and they fought it for years. They actually had language in the act that went in about 8 years ago that said associations absolutely cannot charge anything extra because a unit is a rental. And so that had to come out of the law, and this went into the law. So that percent, your association can have an annual rental permit, but only if you allow 35% or more of your community to be rental units. Doesn't mean you have to be above 35%, but if you do a restriction that says only 20% of our units can be rentals, that's fine. You can still do that. You just cannot charge an annual rental permit fee to those 20% rentals. Make sense? So 10% or 0%, that's fine. Well, 0% wouldn't apply. But if you allow, if your percentage, if it doesn't say anything about a cap, then you can do this. But if you have a cap, the cap can't be less than 35% if you want to charge an annual rental permit fee. We wanted $250. We did a lot of market research. We thought that was fair. And Senator, I don't want to say which senator because I don't want to mess up the name. There's a Utah County senator who thought he is smarter than us, the industry, and all the people that had worked on this bill for several months, and he amended the $250 to $200. That's what happens up there. I don't know who got in his ear. Why, you know, when I see him next time, I will say, so tell me why you think $200 is a better fee. He'll have no idea. Someone just told him to do that. And that's how we work up at the Capitol, unfortunately. So the fee is $200 per year. If you're interested in this program for your association, contact your community manager. This is new. We've got some resolutions, and we will help you get this annual rental permit set up. In addition, this number 7 here updates so that if someone has a problem with something that the board has done on a rule that's passed, for instance, they and what happens is we get ambulance chaser attorneys who 5 years down the line they're mad about some issue in 5 years, and they go backwards and they just sue over every single issue, and it becomes expensive and a big time suck. And so this law, we're glad to get in here that, look, you're welcome to sue for past things, but it can only be the last 18 months. You can't just keep going back and back and back and finding everything in the world. So if it's been 18 months, the decision was made, everyone, that's the decision. It can't be challenged after 18 months. Now, if 3 years ago the board didn't properly and worked on purpose to deceive the homeowners to pass a rule, didn't mail it out or something, yes, I'm sure that there could be some trouble there. But basically, you have 18 months to fight a rule decision of the board. This little part was interesting, that we've had trouble in the Community Association Act, in the PUD world, with rules and design criteria. And so design criteria was taken out. So still, the act still has this 15 days before, 15 days after, and this process that has to be followed, but it does not apply to design criteria any longer. Okay, so thank you, Senator Harper, for that bill, and those are the big changes. A lot of them based on last year, the WaterWise, but adding some pertinent things like the rental permit, the sex offender, those kind of things. And there's another sex offender, different part of that bill that we'll talk about in a minute. HB 450, landscape requirements, Representative Wilcox. This has to do with the same issue, and it has to do with the act that was put in place last year, and they've added things to it that after a few months in actual practice, they thought, oh, we need some clarification here. So if you look at E, the definition of water-wise landscaping, it means I, A, B, I, A, B, and now they've added C, encourages your water-wise landscaping must encourage vegetative coverage as part of that process. Also, they've defined water-wise plant material means a plant material suited to water-wise landscaping as defined in this section. Goes on in section 2, talks about that the association can't prohibit water-wise landscaping, and then section 3 says here are things association that you can do. Okay, so section 2 doesn't prohibit an association from requiring a property owner to, and all those things are listed from last year, but they've added to big letter A at the bottom the word and, took out B. Okay, so minimum or maximum vegetative coverage, and then you so go back, right? Let's go back. So I'm reading there on 3 in the fourth line. Subject to 3B, section 2 does not prohibit an association from requiring a property owner to, and you can restrict other than water-wise plant materials. Okay. And then B is an association may not require a property owner to install or keep in place lawn or turf in an area with a width less than 8 feet. That's from last year. Or have more than 50% vegetative coverage that is not water-wise landscaping on the property owner's property. So it doesn't matter if it's 8 feet or less, if it's or 8 feet or more, you can't require an owner to have more than 50% vegetative coverage that is not water-wise landscaping. And if you go back, water-wise landscaping is defined there at the beginning of the section. Homeownership requirements, Senate Bill 271, Senator McKell. This bill really has nothing to do with associations, but you read it and you could go, oh no, this could affect us. So we just ask him to put number 4 in there to say, this doesn't necessarily affect homeowners or condominium associations. So what the bill says is a county legislative body may not adopt or enforce land use regulations that governs co-owned homes differently than other residential units, or use a land use regulation about the co-owned homes. It's a type of ownership scheme. Some municipalities were making it so that people couldn't participate in them. This bill says stop doing that. And it says that a legislative body in 3 may adopt and enforce land use regulations if the regulations are applied equally to all residential units, including co-owned homes. Okay. Doesn't really matter. What matters, number 4, is this does not limit an HOA or condominium association from adopting rules or regulation governing co-owned homes. Okay, so if you don't even know what a co-owned home is, then you probably don't need to worry about it. Google it. It's a trend, and associations can still have rules about them. Counties and cities, municipalities, and legislative bodies may not. Okay, the sex offender restricted area amendment. So in Harper's bill, prevents the sex offender from serving on the board if that's the community's rule or policy. Representative Malloy's bill is what fixes the definition of what a common, what areas a sex offender cannot be in. So they couldn't be in a public pool in a public park, but now they've defined, or they've added, a public swimming pool or a swimming pool maintained, operated, or owned by a homeowner association, condominium project, or apartment complex. So now it's saying, and this isn't in the Condo Act. This part's not in the Condo Act. It's not in the Community Association Act. This is in the Sex Offender Act. And it's defined now that an association pool is a private pool. And so they've defined it, they can't use that nuisance as a private park or a private pool anymore and go in those areas. It's the exact same as a public pool or a public park. So the first part's the pool, and D, a community park that is open to the public, or a park maintained, operated, or owned by an association, condominium, apartment, a public playground, or a playground maintained, operated, or owned by an homeowner association, condominium project, or apartment complex, including those areas designed to provide minors with space, recreational equipment, and to allow minors to engage in physical activity. There's a little different definition of children and minors. Minors is a wider net, right? Up to 18. And so they expanded that net. These are not protected areas. And so these are areas a sex offender could still go to: a park, playground, or swimming pool located on the property of a home. So you have a home in your association that has a pool. If they're invited, obviously, they can use that pool. So even though you have a association park, maybe an association pool, but an individual home has something too on their lot, the sex offender can go there. Can't prohibit a park or swimming pool that prohibits minors at all times from using the park or swimming pool. So in our active, or not our active adult, in our age-restricted adult communities, age-restricted communities are the only communities that can say no children in a pool ever. Otherwise, that's age discrimination in a regular association. So not an active adult community, not a community that markets itself to older residents, but an actual age restriction where the government, where your governing documents take advantage of that exemption of 55 plus, then there are no minors there. And so a sex offender could be there in that area if there's no minors present. If you do have open swim time where the grandkids can come to the community pool or the community center or the community park in an age-restricted community, then you can prohibit that. All right, legislative act, that's it. That's it for 2023. That's enough. That's the bills that passed. A lot of times, some of these go over bills that didn't pass or bills we wanted. We don't want to do that. It causes confusion, and you hear it and you think it must be a law. So there were several bills that we defeated that we didn't want passed. There was actually nothing that we wanted passed that didn't pass. But there are several bills we definitely wanted to defeat that we were successfully in defeating. That happens. We're volunteers. You know, I have a management company to run. You have a life and a board, a community to run. An insurance guy has insurance things to sell. So we're volunteers on this legislative action committee. Our entire budget is used to pay for full-time professional lobbyists who represent the industry up at the Capitol. We still need all of us to go up there sometimes, but they're our day-to-day contact. And a lot of times we hear about things first through them. We need your donations. And so if you grab that QR code, it takes you to the National CI website. You go down, you choose Utah. The recommendation is $2 per unit. Our new management contracts that many of you have signed or have seen, we've built it into the management contract. And Matthew Herrick in our office has been sending emails, and we've started the process of cutting those checks. So if you're one of our clients, then we're going to manually ask you if you want to do this. If not, or if you want to do a personal donation to this great cause, go ahead and scan that QR code, mention Utah, and they will take a credit card for your donation. Our team is, all of our employees are always up at the Capitol and presenting. This is a picture from our event last year. This year, we actually didn't. We did a virtual event. We didn't go up to the Capitol this year. We thought we were going to have to go up en masse to fight a bill. That ended up, we didn't have to do that. But rest assured, HOA Living is always up there and representing at the Capitol. All of our employees are given time to advocate on behalf of you and our industry. But none of your donations go to HOA Living. We'll just help you cut the check directly to the Legislative Action Committee. Well, okay. See, I thought it would be super short, and I'm just a big talker. So do we have any questions out there? Raise your hand if you have a question, and the team will unmute you, and we'll see if we can answer your question about some of this legislation.
Michael,
Okay,
we've got... Oh, sorry, Neil. You go.
All right, Michael, there was a question from Lance Firm. We have a builder who has unsold homes and is not paying HOA fees. Can we legally charge and collect HOA fees from the builder? This is a relatively common thing because there's a whole lot of construction going on in Utah.
Yep, the acts don't prohibit that. What you have to look at is your specific community documents. A lot of time developers put an exception that lots owned but not developed don't pay assessments until they're built on and there's a unit with a certificate of occupancy. But if this is a builder that's bought lots from the developer, then that sometimes that also is mentioned in the documents as exempted or discounted, but there's generally always a expiration date of that. And so you would have to look at your specific CC&Rs and see what exemptions have been given. If it doesn't mention specifically that developing lots or builder-owned lots are exempted from paying the assessment, then the state statute would support them being like any other owner, whether or not they have a home built or not on a lot. So look at your CC&Rs, go over those with your manager. We're glad to take a look at them and see if what kind of language is in there. But there is no legislative act that says one way or the other. It just says, hey, you own something, you pay. And if there's exemptions, those would be in your local community's documents. Great question.
Okay, so again, if there are any questions, you can raise your hand or type them in the Q&A chat down at the bottom. Right now, I'm not seeing any.
Well, we keep it simple, right? We keep it simple in the legislation. We try. Things will come up. And things came up after last year. They always do that. We weren't expecting or didn't know. And so when those come up and we work through them, then we make modifications for next year's session. Once again, we would love to have any of our HOA board members, condominium board members, serve on the Legislative Action Committee. If that's something that has interest of you, it's 1 to 2 hours a month, maybe with a little extra during the session. Please reach out to your community manager or to me directly. We could use your assistance.
Okay, one more question was just typed in from Ray Seeley. Please discuss setting a rental cap for an HOA that has close to 50% investors today during the builder's control.
Yeah, so an association, the law allows an association to set rental caps. It's different. The law changed about 12 years ago, and association the board could make a rule that would limit the number of rentals. Now it can't be that way. It has to be done through the CCNRs, has to be an amendment to CCNR. So that means the entire membership votes on it, and they can still set that that limit based on your amendment clause in your CCNRs. What happens, Ray, right, with those 50% of those homes that are already renting? Say you have 100 homes and 50 of them are rentals, but you're going to set the cap at 35%. Why are you going to set it at 35%? So you can charge that $200 a year rental permit fee. So that means now you have 15 more rentals than the cap that the association sets. In your amendment that you pass, you want to specify what's going to happen. Typically what happens is, as leases expire on those 50 rental units, then they're dropped off. And so the first 15 in that example, where their current leases end, then there no longer can be a rental. And they're like, wait, we've been a rental for 4 years. That's just, but if you get 2/3 of the community to vote, that's the vote. Obviously, they're going to vote against you. So it is kind of hard to get the 2/3 that your documents probably require. But that's how it would do. You would get down to the whatever the percentage you wanted to be. You can make it 10%, and then you just couldn't do the rental permit fee, but that would be then you would have 40 more than the 10, and it would take a long time to get to where you want to go. The 35% number that came in the act for the rental permit fee isn't random. That is the number that a lot of mortgages and lenders use as kind of their cutoff. And they say, if a community has more than 35%, which your community has 50%, it sounds like, then you're going to suffer because the number of available mortgage lenders decreases, because a lot of lenders view a high rental percentage as a risk. It's harder on the community generally, which is another reason we want rental permit fees, so we can communicate. I think that breaks down some of those barriers. But yeah, you have to go through a process. And then you say you're going to 35%, you're at 50, you get down, you're at 35%, and now someone new wants to rent again. They go on a waiting list. As soon as lease number 35 expires, now that person who's been on the waiting list the longest gets that new available rental. So it is hard to unwind when a builder, it sounds like developer in your case, is just let it go to sell units. That's unfortunate, but you can pull it back. It just takes some time. Great question.
Yeah. And a kind of clarifying question Ray continued to ask, can the builder restrict rentals before turnover?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and if there's a builder developer now, they probably have the ability to amend the CCNRs without a vote of the owners, but it depends on the market. Right now, there's times where developers won't sell to investors because then they're kind of competing against themselves. But in this economy right now, with interest rates higher, they will sell to anybody because they want to sell the product. But good question. But yes, they can put it in. I've seen some developers, some Utah companies, I know Ivory Homes has done it several times, where the CCNR say no rentals in a unit during our time of development, and then after that, the association will set their policy. So kudos to them. All right, is that it, Neil?
That is it. We thank you everyone for attending. And Ferris, I will get with Dan and we'll get your question answered from yesterday. Thank you for letting us know.
Yeah, we're still doing some research on yesterday's great questions. If you want to leave a great glowing 5-star review, we're glad to have you do that for one of our 2 Utah management companies. And remember, 3 weeks from today, Financials 101. And since we're getting people from all over the country starting to watch our programs, that is at noon Mountain still every time, but there's for the other time zones. Thank you very much for attending today. We appreciate the time that you spend to volunteer in your community to be on your board. We know it can be a thankless job sometimes. And hey, we're here to help. Let us know. Thanks. Have a great day.